there have been a set of principles, a set of laws, a set of guidelines, which have been the foundation of that religion. Members of the Baha'i faith believe in one God, the oneness of mankind, independent investigation of truth, the common foundation of all religions, the essential harmony of science and religion, the equality of men and women, elimination of prejudice of all kinds, universal compulsory education, a spiritual solution to economic problems, the use of a universal auxiliary language, and lastly, the universal peace held up by a world government. Good evening, and welcome to Baha'i Fireside. I'm Claudia Mulvaney, your host for tonight's program. Tonight we are going to be discussing in a little more detail some of the basic principles that govern members of the Baha'i faith, some of the rules, the laws, and the ideals that Baha'is strive to achieve in their daily life on a daily basis. I have two Baha'i guests with me this evening, Larry Curtis and Ted Groger, and I'd like to welcome them to the program. Welcome, Ted and Larry. Nice of you to be here.
It's nice to be here.
Good. Ted, tell me just a little bit about yourself, please, before we start, so the audience can get to know you.
Yeah, I own and operate a business. Have been a member of the San Leandro community for about 5 years. And I was raised in a Baha'i family. And I'm glad to be here.
Good. I'm glad you are too, Ted. Larry, tell me a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm a welder, and I'm an artist of just not of reputation, but I do it for fun. And then I help with this TV program once in a while.
Mm-hmm. Okay, let's start. We mentioned some of the basic beliefs. Perhaps some of you might like to know that the picture that you saw was a picture of the house of worship. The Baha'i house of worship is located in Wilmette, Illinois, and it's called the Mother Temple of the West. Now, in that temple, God is worshipped and prayed to. But the question, of course, is, Ted, which God?
All right. Well, in the Baha'i faith, we believe that there's only one God. And no matter what we call him, people from various faiths all over the world have a different name for God. But as Baha'is, we know from what Baha'u'llah has taught us that there is, in fact, only one God. And he's an unknowable essence, a supreme being that we can never have direct communication with. The only way we come to know about this supreme creator, this unknowable essence, is through his manifestation. And each manifestation of God, Christ, Muhammad, Buddha, Zoroaster, has taught about God.
Now, when you mention the word Baha'u'llah, can we tell the audience a little bit who Baha'u'llah is?
Yes, Baha'u'llah is the manifestation of God for this age. He's the latest in a succession of prophets that has come to educate mankind, to uplift him spiritually, and to bring laws that help him carry forward an ever-advancing civilization.
Okay, the oneness of mankind, Larry. Ted just talked about prophet for mankind today. The oneness of mankind, let's discuss that principle.
Okay. People throughout history have tried to divide mankind into various sectors. They divide man into races, and they divide them by nations and various characteristics. And what we say, and really science bears it out. Even when the people tried to scientifically prove that men were separate from one another, what they really find is the commonality of man. That we really all do come from the same basic roots. And we believe that all mankind are the children of God. We're all one family, and we have to start learning to act like a family and care for one another like a family.
Okay, the oneness of religion is something that people sometimes object to, thinking that it's elimination of their religion and the changing to some other religion. Can you comment on that aspect of the Baha'i principles, Ted, the oneness of religion, and how it applies to...
Sure. The oneness of religion is a principle that Baha'u'llah has brought and expounded upon greatly in this age. He has said that all the prophets of God have come from the same God. Okay, therefore, each faith that has come has taught the same faith. The only difference has been in the social teachings. So we have social teachings that are suited for the requirements of a particular age. We see that back in the days of Moses, people were prohibited from eating things like pork. Or at that time, people didn't know about trichinosis. It's only in this age that we have found out about trichinosis, and that law no longer applies. So what we see in religions is differences with the social teachings. In this age, the principle for mankind is the oneness of mankind, world unity. Never before has this been possible in any past dispensation, but it's possible in this age. And again, the laws change according to the requirements of the age in which the prophet comes. And each of these manifestations has talked about his own return. So we have in Islam the return of the Imam, and in Buddhism the return of the fifth Buddha, the return of Christ, the return of the Lord of Hosts. All of these returns are, it's prophecy, and all the religions are united to this prophecy and find their fulfillment in Baha'u'llah.
Okay. Now, with all of these religions to choose from, and all of the different things that are presented to television audiences, radio audiences, just people in general, what principle of the Baha'i faith would assist someone in their search and in their seeking, Larry?
Well, the universal auxiliary language would basically be very helpful. We believe that it's important that we have the various cultures in the world, and that the world has its diversity, okay? However, we also recognize the necessity for communication in this world, okay? In the past, for example, the days of Columbus, no one really knew that America existed and the peoples in America, okay? And now, they not only know about us, but they have to learn to get along with us and have to learn to talk with us, the peoples of the world. The United States has become a very big part of this world. And if we're going to get along with one another in this world, we have to be able to communicate. And an auxiliary language is the only really feasible way of doing that, because everybody learns two languages, their own language of their home.
And what other language?
Yet to be decided. The Baha'is haven't come up with a language that they say this is the one the world has to adopt. We believe that the world will naturally adopt another language on its own.
As an auxiliary language that everyone will have.
Right.
How about, Ted, in terms of the investigation that people are faced with and the examination? And isn't there a principle about independent investigation of truth?
Yes.
What does that mean?
Yes. This means that everybody has to stand on their own feet, so to speak. They have to recognize the manifestation of God for themselves. You can't rely upon your fathers or your forebears, upon their interpretation about anything. You have to go to the books yourself, read, and discover the truth for yourself. And this is everybody's responsibility in this age.
Well, how about the fact that I was born of a specific religion, and I want to do that because that's what my mom and dad did?
Well, you know, we believe that truth is one. There's only one reality. And by investigating reality, darkness is dispelled. And we believe that by investigating the Baha'i writings for yourself, you will see the unity and the oneness of religion and realize that religion is one, that there is no difference, and that Baha'u'llah is the latest manifestation of God for this age.
Larry, if you were to investigate the Baha'i teachings, because there's over 100 volumes, there's books, prayers, revelations, letters that have been written by the Prophet Baha'u'llah and by his son Abdul-Baha and other members of the Baha'i faith through the last 146 years of history, the question I have is, do you come with your own preconceived notions about this strange-sounding religion, or would you come with an open mind? What do you think, Larry?
Well, I think everybody, has their own baggage, okay, that they carry along from their life in the past. And the beauty of the Baha'i faith is that you can have any cultural background, you can have any life experience behind you and still come to the Baha'i faith and recognize the truth of it and see the beauty of it.
Okay. Now, this is a very tricky question that I'm going to ask you both, and I'd like you both to comment on it. So often, particularly in today's world, science and religion don't seem to agree. You either believe in very mystical things on a religious basis, or for that matter, very mystical things on a scientific basis. But so often they don't seem to go together. They seem to be in contradiction. How does the Baha'i faith approach science and religion? Is it something that's together or separate? Okay?
Well, as Baha'is, Baha'u'llah has given us the principle that science and religion should be unified, that they are two sides of the same coin. And science explains the material world, while faith explains the spiritual world. And the two really do not contradict each other. And he further says that if religion does not agree with science and reason and faith don't accord, then the faith is superstition.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. We believe that God created this universe with certain laws, physical laws, and that when the messengers of God come here, they obey those laws, not because they have to, but everything that they do does fit within reason. It does fit within logic. And people very often look at the holy books of the various religions and they say, well, that doesn't agree with science. They can't be explained except through pure faith and pure belief, and a lot of people believe that's superstition because there's no fact behind it. Mm-hmm. And what we believe is that when you have a situation like that, it's because you really don't understand what that holy text was trying to teach man when you believe that there's a contradiction. Now, there are many scientific facts in these holy books that do come out in time, and they're in a way proofs that God has given us. And the one that stands out in my mind is in Islam. Muhammad, in the year 640, he was telling people that the sun rotated in a stationary position. Okay? And people couldn't understand that. They still believed that the world was flat and that the earth was the center of the universe. Mm-hmm. And the sun, there was some kind of superstition about how the sun got from underneath the world and come back over on the other side, or maybe it was new suns every time. I don't really know. I know that people were burned for heresy, for suggesting that the world was not flat and that there wasn't an edge that people would fall off. When the time came when Galileo came up with his telescope and scientists and mathematicians got involved in later history, we found out that the sun was the center of our solar system, and it has its own axis. It does spin. Okay, so it's stationary, and you can say it's stationary and say it's true, but it does rotate as well. So there's a scientific fact in one of the holy books that we can all believe now.
Okay.
I'd like to add that Baha'u'llah enjoins us to study languages that are of profit to mankind and not sciences that begin in words and end in words.
So philosophical dissertations and sitting and contemplating things over and over and over again that don't do anything for mankind. It would be preferable to do something that was beneficial, correct?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Now, we were talking about the center of the universe and the sun and so on, and I think for a long time, you may disagree with me, gentlemen, but men have felt that perhaps they were the center of the universe, or at least the ruling body of the universe. But there's an interesting principle that is common knowledge now, but is interpreted in a different way, having to do with men and women.
Yeah, this is the principle of equality between men and women. And this is a new principle for this age. It's never been revealed in any previous religion. Let me see.
I could fill in.
Just trying to get my thoughts together.
That's
here.
okay.
Baha'u'llah says that the world is like two wings of a bird. One wing is man and one is woman. And until both develop equally, the bird can't fly. And woman, since the beginning of time, hasn't had the same opportunities and the same education that man has had. So she's been deprived and hasn't been able to assume her proper place in the world.
Okay, the place, though, Ted, is not the same place as man. It's a different position. It's a different station, isn't it, Larry?
Yes, see, we don't believe that women and men are the same. We believe that they deserve equal rights, equal opportunity for education, equal opportunity for jobs and throughout society. This has been denied women throughout history. And in this day and age, it's starting to turn around. Women are finding that they can get out of the house and they can get into business and they can, in fact, operate and run businesses. And women have not achieved equality in this world at this day, but at least they're on their way.
Mm-hmm. Ted, did you have something to add to that?
No, not really.
Okay. I'd like to add something, and I just find it something that's very interesting right now, and that is the fact that even with all the movement and motions toward the equality of jobs, the equality of education, there is also the station of women in terms of motherhood and wifehood and raising children and so on that is just coming to fruition. In other words, it isn't hurry up and grow up so I can go to work. In some cases, it's to stay home and to nurture and to be the basis for the development of those children.
Yes.
So we don't even know quite what the role of women is yet in this new era, do we?
No, it's something I think as time goes on and man progresses, we become to know ourselves better. And women will also know themselves better.
And so both of us will change, won't we? As mankind and womankind develop, so the race of men will evolve, won't it?
We're continually evolving. That's our purpose on the planet.
That is such a positive outlook. You know, so many times these principles seem like just sort of cut and dried things, but they are the basis for the evolution of a new race of men here on the planet. And adherence to these principles and attempts and perseverance, I think, through prayer and meditation and good deeds, the evolution of man will change. The whole station of mankind will change. There's one thing that could get in the way of that, however, and that is, you used the word baggage, Larry, but the prejudices that we carry with us. How can we overcome some of the incredible array of prejudice that mankind takes with them?
This is going to be probably a difficult problem for the world, but this is one of the principles of the Baha'i faith, is the elimination of all forms of prejudice. And I don't need to list them all because there's so many of them.
Well, some people think almost only if they think, oh, prejudice, you mean racial prejudice. Just name one or two other ones.
Well, there's political prejudice, religious prejudice, economic prejudice, yeah, all forms. And mankind has to learn to live in unity and prejudice is the biggest barrier toward this unity. And we wonder now, how is man going to be capable of, getting rid of this baggage? Well, this is the purpose of religion, the purpose of faith. Baha'u'llah, when he came, he revealed over 100 volumes of works, which is the revealed Word of God for this age. And we believe that the revealed Word of God has the power to transform people. And although it may be a slow process, it does possess this power. And the Baha'i faith itself is an example of really a model for society today, in that religious prejudice is almost unknown in the Baha'i faith itself.
Well, you'd also say then, Larry, that other prejudices were unknown.
Yeah, excuse me, I meant all forms of prejudice.
But I think racial, though, Ted, is a very important factor, because that's the first one we think of when we think of prejudice. We don't realize that we have other prejudices.
Well, it is important, because if we kind of go back to the oneness of humanity, we believe that we're all one family. Okay, if you start out with that, then you have to realize that, of course, the family's going to have differences, but they have to learn to absolve them. Whether they are differences, for example, one of the greatest things, and it's really good to see what's happening right now, for example, with Ethiopia, with, how people from out the world are outreaching to these starving people in the world, and you find natural disasters like earthquakes that are happening, and people are reaching out from one country border to another, and they forget their language differences, and they forget their cultural differences, and they reach out because they realize, hey, I may live a few thousand miles away, but those people are still part of this world and part of the same humanity that I belong to, and I have to be involved in that and help them. And that is what the Baha'i faith is teaching, that we have to get rid of prejudice just on that level, that we have to realize that we are one. We have to start working together.
I think, too, on a level you mentioned before, Ted, that the world has not been ready for some of these things up to this point. And I think the technological advances of the Live Aid concert to benefit the starving in Ethiopia, that brought together on a worldwide basis people for one cause, that they worked together from every country. I don't know how many countries were involved, where they broadcast from Australia and Italy and the different places, that brought the world together in one cause, which proves that it's possible.
This is where communications has changed the world so much. In the day of Christ, it was a very difficult journey just to go from one town to another. And nations hadn't really evolved until the time of Muhammad. And now, when Baha'u'llah comes here, his teachings are of a world-embracing nature, because mankind has reached the stage that we can think of a world-embracing nature. As we said before, people didn't even realize that there were worlds beyond a month's journey by foot.
Right. Now, one of the things that we talked briefly about, and that is education. We here in America, we just automatically send our kids to school when they hit 5 and assume that our children are going to go to college. What is the Baha'i teaching, Larry, on education?
Well, it is a universal compulsory education. We believe that all people must have the opportunity to learn the facts that are necessary for them to survive in their own area. Now, it doesn't mean that we have to come up with a universal curriculum and everyone has to learn computers everywhere in the world. Okay? There's still that room for diversity. People can learn agriculture, they can learn the arts and the sciences. But people have to have the opportunity in this world to learn. And if there's a country that doesn't have the financial backing to do it, then other nations should give them that financial backing so that everyone has that opportunity, and so that we can develop the human resources in this world, because the human resources in this world far outweigh the mineral resources that we could ever find in this world.
And yet, Larry and Ted, I'd like you to address this, if you would. The economics, for instance, of mineral resources, oil and gold and coal and gas and these type of things, people seem so possessive, and it seems so materialistic intricately connected, and yet you're stating that these things belong to all the peoples of the world. Is there any kind of solution to the economics of the world, Ted?
Yes, the economic solution is going to have to be a spiritual solution. And again, this is tied in directly with the principle of the oneness of mankind. And until mankind becomes unified, we can't even begin to address these other problems, because this is the basis. We know today that economics is really interrelated. All the countries in the world are interdependent upon one another. And the different barriers that exist are created because people are trying to get everything they can for themselves. And when the world finally attains oneness and realizes this, these barriers will begin to melt away because they'll be working with each other.
Okay, now you're talking about a oneness and a unity and the elimination of some of these barriers. There's going to have to be somebody leading all of this and taking care of the administrative aspects of this one world of unity. What would that be, and how is it going to be accomplished?
Okay, the Baha'is believe that the world, the governments of the world, must, by their own free will, develop a world government, of which there are representatives from every country in the world. And this is a government that will take care of many things, such as, for example, outlawing war. We believe that in the future, it must become necessary for this world that we outlaw war. And that world government will be in charge of keeping that peace.
Well, we have covered, Ted and Larry and I, some of the basic principles of the Baha'i faith. The last one, which we really didn't get much of a chance to cover, is the universal government. We talk so much about a universal peace, which is more than an end to war. It is the new era, the new way the world will live. I want to thank you both so much for being here on the program. The principles and talks about the principles are available at Baha'i Firesides, which are held locally in your area. I'd like to invite you to come and see the program again on Wednesday nights, and it's wonderful having had both of you here. I hope you'll come again.
We will.
This is Claudia Mulvaney for Baha'i Fireside. Good night, and we'll see you next week.